The surge of Omicron cases in the U.S. is putting thousands of restaurants at risk of closing for good. According to the Independent Restaurant Coalition, nearly 60% of restaurants across the country lost more than half of their sales in December because of Omicron. While the Biden administration did set aside more than $28 billion in the American Rescue Plan for restaurants, that aid did not reach every business that needed help. Now, many of these restaurants say they are dangerously close to shutting down for good if they don't get assistance soon. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News MoneyWatch reporter Megan Cerullo. Hi, Megan. Great to see you. So, exactly what sort of assistance from the federal government are these struggling restaurants hoping to get, and what is the possibility of them actually receiving it?
They need immediate cash grants like those that were provided by the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. The only problem was that there just weren't enough funds to go around. So the $28.6 billion were quickly depleted. There is new legislation. There's a piece of legislation called the Entree Act, aptly named. Entrepreneurs need timely replenishment for eating establishments that would refill the revitalization fund. And that's what restaurateurs say they need to survive. If they don't see the money, we won't see these independent establishments when we walk down the streets anymore.
So what is going to happen then if no relief comes? It doesn't look, likely that everyone's going to get the relief they need. So do you have an idea of how many restaurants may end up having to close permanently?
Well, we've seen roughly 90,000 closures to date. Unfortunately, we're in the midst of another wave of the virus, and 177,000 restaurants and bars applied for these funds and did not receive them. And they say that they're in danger of closing. Those establishments that didn't receive funds are more likely to have received an eviction notice or are anticipating receiving an eviction notice. And December, which is usually a really lucrative month for restaurants, given how people like to celebrate around the holidays, they rely on private party bookings, et cetera. A lot of folks canceled their plans because that was the height of this latest wave. And nearly 60% of restaurants say that their sales were cut in half in December. So they don't have those strong sales to buoy them through slower months like January. And business this month has gone from slow to almost non-existent, one restaurant owner told me.
It's such a shame because really before the Omicron wave hit, it looked like things were just, about to be back to normal, and a lot of restaurants were sort of buzzing again. I mean, here in New York, we saw all the sidewalk sort of extensions of restaurants that got built and seemed to be doing well. So it's a shame that this has happened again. If COVID cases, Megan, though, do drop again, like they've been here in New York and some of the larger cities that had the first leg of the COVID wave, will restaurants be able to recover on their own, or is this damage already done?
Like you said, it did seem like we were turning a corner, or we'd begun to. I was almost comfortable enough to start eating in restaurants again. But these days, people are fearful. It's obviously very cold outside, and so outdoor dining sales aren't up. And restaurants are struggling with staff members. They're out sick. And so even though there are no forced restrictions on capacity, for example, they're just not able to seat as many customers. And then to answer your question directly, the damage has already been done, and it's not going to be enough just for the virus to lift and for cases to start receding. Restaurants have a lot of debt they have to pay off, and we know they have notoriously thin margins. And it's going to really take a long time for them to make up for all these lost sales, and they really do need these immediate cash infusions if they're going to stick around.
And Megan, we've been talking about the restaurant owners themselves, but what about all the employees, right? I mean, every time a restaurant shuts down, even for a few days or a month, you think about all those people who've lost their income. We know already the labor market was tight. We know that, restaurant owners and retail shops were having trouble attracting people back. Is there also the sense that these people won't come back either once the restaurants come back up? They've got to find new jobs. This is round two, perhaps, for many of them of losing these jobs. What about the labor market?
That's right. We've seen since the beginning of the pandemic, this isn't unique to Omicron, but restaurant workers who left or were laid off when the establishments they worked for close temporarily ended up not returning to the industry. They ended up seeking work elsewhere, work that was better paid and put them in less hazardous scenarios in which they were less exposed to the virus and less likely to get sick. And you make a good point, because restaurant owners have incurred all of these new costs, inflation, so the price of goods are rising. They're having to pay for COVID tests for their staff to screen employees and make sure folks aren't sick. But they're also having to offer workers more money, which is a good thing, which they want to, but they're having to pay them more, and they're having to offer them better benefits to just keep them on staff and be able to keep their operations running.
Such a challenging environment. Oh, we wish the restaurant industry the best, because I know if you're like me, you enjoy going out to dinner. I certainly do. All right. Well, Megan Cerullo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Tanya.